All of the text messages I received from everybody suggest we're pretty excited about growth mindset. And we should be, right? Because it's the argument that we believe in our human capacity to learn, and that we not only can learn from error and failure, but to some degree must. That our brain is something that grows through experience and through struggle with problem solving. That's a positive idea because it suggests that if we work hard enough, if we use support resources, if we connect with people and ideas and are patient and problem solve, we can achieve anything. That mixture of an understanding of how fixed mindsets limit us and a growth mindset paired with grit and resilience can make a difference in our lives. We all want to believe that, and I think we've all seen that in our individual lives. But not everybody is thrilled with Dweck's idea of growth mindset, especially when we apply it to the education system as a whole, especially when we talk about how teachers and schools and society think about struggling students. And so I want to introduce you to this concept of deficit ideology. You're going to read a blog post by a scholar and critic named P.J. Tucker, and in it he includes this really cool definition from Gorski of deficit ideology. And the basic idea of deficit ideology is that we tend to think of students as the problem in our education system. So the reason so many students aren't doing well isn't poverty. The reason students aren't doing well isn't racism or gender discrimination or any of the other inequities and problems in our society. The reason is that students aren't trying hard enough. Basically, that students are the problem. That's kind of what deficit ideology is in a nutshell. It puts the blame for the problems in our educational system on the individual student. And that's kind of problematic because it lets teachers off the hook for having to create supportive environments and curriculum that can recognize the beautiful, powerful things students bring to the class and build on it. And it lets society off the hook for doing something about the poverty and inequities that frame the everyday life of so many children in school. So we end up not really changing the system. We just keep telling students, you need to change. You're the problem. In other words, the problem is you're giving up too easily. You have a fixed mindset. If you only had a growth mindset and worked harder, you would do great. So that's the tricky part of this, right? When we look at something like growth mindset, obviously every individual person will be better off if they embrace that idea. But when we think about collective agency, the growth mindset idea can be kind of limiting. It can point to this kind of deficit ideology you're going to read more closely and we're going to talk about more. So this is a really good example of the paradox of agency. Growth mindset is a powerful tool to enhance any individual we're working with and their agency. Every individual, no matter what their background, could find empowerment in that concept. However, on the collective level, on the level of collective agency, growth mindset can be limiting because it distracts schools and society from the kind of real change we need to make if we're going to make our schools better and our society better. In other words, it's not that growth mindset is good or bad. It's not that growth mindset supports agency or limits it. It's that it can simultaneously be both. In terms of individual agency, growth mindset seems quite powerful. In terms of collective agency, I think you're going to see from Tucker and from Reina Grande's book that it can be limiting. It can undermine the kind of change we need to demand from teachers, schools, and our government and our society to address poverty, to create the kind of places that Dweck talks about, those places where yet is a possibility. And I think that when we think about growth mindset on the collective level, the idea itself can prevent the kind of social investment that would create the classroom even Dweck is dreaming of. So it's a really complicated and interesting paradox, and it's important to remember that we want to break away from binary thinking, the idea that growth mindset is good or growth mindset is bad. By the way, the critic you're going to read, P.J. Tucker, in his piece kind of falls into the binary thinking trap, even though he accuses growth mindset people of doing that, or people who believe in growth mindset. So it's really kind of interesting to see how easy it is to get sucked up into the idea of this is right, this is wrong, rather than seeing that an idea can be right and powerful in some contexts and problematic in other contexts, which I think, by the way, is exactly where you're going to see Grande trying to go, recognizing the paradox of growth mindset, seeing how growth mindset can be empowering as an individual, but the realities of deficit ideology, racism, and poverty can make it very difficult for people like her and Betty to develop their growth mindset, to find their yet and move forward, that both of those things can be happening at the same time. All right, with that in mind, I want you to explore the materials that I have embedded in this lecture/quiz and see where you can go with it. I know this is complicated stuff, but give it a chance. I think you'll see it'll pay off over the course of the semester and really enrich your reading of Grande and your writing about agency.